Well, hello and welcome to another Case Filters monthly interview with some of Case's top pros and ambassadors. We'll be talking to people every month, and this month, delighted to have another guest who we're going to interview for the next 45 minutes to an hour or so, and I'll introduce you to him in just a second. But first of all, if you haven't joined us before, just some basic things. We're live, obviously, on Facebook and on YouTube. There are live chats in both of those, so do feel free to use those if you want to ask any questions. We'd be delighted to hear from you through the evening, so feel free to use those. Let us know where you're joining us from as well in the chat. It's always cool to hear from you. And finally, if you do want to watch this again afterwards, then the session should be available for replay not long after it wraps up, so feel free to check that out. You can share it, watch it again, whatever you would like to do. So anyway, let's start. Do you know, I completely forgot. I was chatting to you just before we started, and I meant to say, and please forgive me, how do I pronounce your name properly?
The easiest way would be to call it Nejc.
Nejc. I can do that, Nejc.
Yeah.
And how would you pronounce it?
Similar, same way, actually.
Okay. All right. You're very gracious.
My surname goes a little bit more difficult with the English-speaking people, but it's okay.
We'll go for Nejc. Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'm here with Nejc, who is one of Case's pro ambassadors. Nejc, based in Slovenia, and landscape and adventure photographer for the most part, I think is how you would probably describe yourself, Nejc. But for people like myself who maybe don't know you very well, do you want to just start off by telling us just where you're from and when you first picked up a camera?
Okay, thank you, Ruth, for the nice introduction. So hello to everybody in the listening to the interview. So my name is Nejc Trpin, and I come from a small country in the Central Europe called Slovenia. So Slovenia is getting noticed recently, mostly because of our cyclists going worldwide, very famous. But also we have a very beautiful landscape, very, very diverse country with a lot of landscapes, a lot of mountains, a lot of different views that they are getting very, very popular during the photography spectrum, if we use it like this. So I started to notice this kind of landscape surrounding me very early when I was a kid already. So most of the time I was in love with the mountains. I was always looking to climb up to the peaks to see how the view looks like. Around, and when you go higher, you go more horizons open in front of your eyes. So it goes to the vast landscapes more and more and more always. So then you start to travel and so on. And I realized I want to capture some memories for me, for myself. Sometimes you have some places you can't go again. So it was somewhere in the high school that I started to practice a little bit with photography. It was actually a very simple film camera at the time from my grandfather. It was from Eastern Germany at the time, so it was an old one. And I started with the film, experimenting. Have to say that those photos were pretty bad, but for me they're still showing quite nice memories. But then later on, when the digital cameras started to appear, everything became much more cheaper. And then at the beginning of the, let's say, university part, I started to seriously dig into the photography. I also signed into the local photographical society. I got my mentor, who is one of my best friends today. So he somehow introduced me to the mostly landscape photography, and then later I developed through the years.
Mm-hmm. So do you still shoot film, or are you purely digital now?
If I'm honest, actually, I'm purely digital, because that camera that I had, unfortunately, it's gone. It's not working anymore. And actually, I don't have time and possibly, all the other stuff for developing the film. I don't have the darkroom anymore and things like that. So purely digital now.
Digital. It's a lot of work. Film it'd be nice if you were able to do both, but it's a lot more work. So do you remember you talked there about you started in high school, you got a bit more serious in university. Do you remember the first image perhaps that you took that you thought this is quite a good image, maybe I'm okay at this?
It was actually, if I would look through today's eyes, it was a really silly and bad photograph. But actually, I was experimenting a lot with the longer exposures. So I remember I had like a it was a small digital camera which has a very small LCD screen in the behind, and I was twisting it in the low light around and making like patterns in the grass or something like that, or with a candlelight, something like that, like totally artistic. Today I would just delete them probably because it's like a failure. But at the time, they thought like they are special to me. I still
Yeah.
have them, but just like don't look at them too often.
No, but it's nice to be able to look back, and it's nice to be able to pinpoint an image where you thought, yeah, there's something, I can do something special here. And the more creative, the more exciting it is as well. Are you a full-time photographer just now, or is it a kind of something you
Well,
do?
I've been till recently. Now unfortunately because of the coronavirus, not
Mhm.
anymore. I was forced to adjust a little bit. But yeah, I was actually living from the photography workshops that I was having. It was more like a educational part of the way, but also I was doing some projects on the side for
Okay.
myself in the professional way.
Well,
So.
fingers crossed it comes back to being able to do full time. I know it's very, very difficult, so I want to talk to you about lockdown in a few moments as well, but I'll come to that. So when what was that kind of transition like from just doing photographs for yourself? When did you decide you could actually and you wanted to become full time?
Um, it was, I don't know. I was actually when I was developing, through the way when people approached to me and said, we like your photographs. Would you be able to do this kind of photographs for us? Or for example, you start with the small things,
Mhm.
birthdays or I don't know, this kind of social gatherings, and then slowly it goes higher and higher, and then you try to you spread the network, and more people hear about you, and then slowly it starts to grow up. But honestly, in Slovenia, I was never focused. Frankly speaking, I was never focused to the Slovenian market. In Slovenia, we have pretty small population, about 2 million population in the
Mhm.
country, and we have quite a lot of photographers, especially now in the digital era. So the competition is really high. I was actually more focusing in the international way, so to gain experience mostly in the landscape photography, which was my first love.
Mhm.
So actually, I kind of had an idea to share my knowledge. So as I was growing, I was also wanted to share the knowledge with the other enthusiast photographers. Also, how to say, to try to connect it with the travels. So people would come
Yes.
to Slovenia. I would show them our beautiful country, to take them to the spots and explain how to take the best photographs at the time we are there.
So, I mean, Slovenia, obviously, you mentioned not that many people have heard about it, but not that many people know much about it. What would people be surprised to learn from a landscape point of view that Slovenia has to offer? Because, I mean, I've got some pictures which I'm going to try and I'm going to just flick through some of them because some of these are not Slovenia,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
let me try and find some that are Slovenian. I think we had this one here. This
yeah.
is Slovenia.
This is
So, I
one of the
mean,
famous ones, actually.
it looks like Switzerland to me, but you
No,
obviously
yeah.
share the Alps.
Majority of the people that they come to Slovenia, first of all, they are expecting a third world country, basically, because
Mm.
it has this kind of, especially my kind of clients, that they come mostly from United States, from English speaking countries.
Yeah.
They don't expect it's developed. It's a modern European country. But on the other side, we have this diversity, which is in a very small space. If, for example, from this picture, the point that this picture is taking, that we have it on the screen, to the sea coast, it's about 1 hour and 15 minutes of driving. So it's
Wow.
actually very, very close. You can go in one day. You can go from the mountains with the snow capped peaks all the way to the coast of the Adriatic Sea, when you have the Mediterranean cities, Venetian architecture, and so on.
Wow.
So
It's
this
got a
kind of,
lot in a small space.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, this
Yeah.
diversity is what it makes it special.
Yeah. I mean, are you finding that there are more and more people becoming aware of what it has
No,
to
yeah,
offer?
yeah. Especially, it's quite interesting because especially in the landscape photography culture, I would call it kind of like a subculture in
Hmm.
the, I would say, social media space, if I use this term. There are some points in the world, they are like must see for the photographers. Uh, there are some places that you just must visit if you're a landscape photographer, and some of the points in Slovenia are already getting in this map, so
Wow.
to be doing the must see. And the photograph that you just picked up, it's one of those, because it was one of the first internationally known photographs of Slovenia. Slovenia is a young country. It's become independent in 1991 from former Yugoslavia. And at the time when Yugoslavia was falling apart, one of the National Geographic photographers, Steve McCurry, had kind of like a mission to make a story about Yugoslavia. And one of the photographs that he took was a little bit of controversial, because he took a photograph of this church. This is St. Primus Church in Jamnik, with the mountain that you can see in the back, the pyramid peak. And he took it when there was a full moon rising from behind the mountain. And it's become controversial because many photographers try to make a similar photograph through the years. This was taken in February when the full moon was rising up, and the full moon never rised on that side of the mountain that Steve McCurry took a photograph. So there was kind of a speculation of if it's real or not, if it's fake or not. So these kind of photographs are becoming very, very popular in the world.
I mean, it's got everything, doesn't it? It's got the mountains, it's got the beautiful church, it's got your perfect leading lines, the composition. It's stunning, and there's quite a lot of other photos. I won't go through them all, but you've got a few that you've sent in of various places. Is this Slovenia as well? I'm trying to see what I've got. That's Slovenia as well, and then
another one. Yeah.
And I'm sure I had one with a sunset. I'm trying to find, but I'm not entirely sure where I've put it. But beautiful. Just this is the one here. Is this in Slovenia as well?
Yeah, these are the Slovenian Alps. It's actually from taken close to the capital, Ljubljana. So it's with the telephoto lens, but yes, sunrise in the mountains.
Yeah. No, I mean, obviously you've got the mountains on your doorstep, and you mentioned that when you were little or when you were younger, you like to go up there and see the view. Outside of Slovenia, are there other places that you travel to also, visit different mountain ranges that you like?
Yeah, I mostly stick to the Alps, So for us, it's very simple. You just sit in the car and drive for half an hour, and then you hike a little bit, and you come to a perfect place for the sunrises or the sunsets or so on. But of course, yeah, it's always nice to go to the other parts, like Dolomites are very famous. Also, if you want to be a photo guide through the years, you have to know these kind of famous locations that you can also provide clients another service, another place, that you can take them. If they are satisfied with you, you can take them to one time. You go here in Slovenia, then the next year they want to go with you again. You take them to the Dolomites or to Tuscany or to whatever. Yeah, but somehow for me, the mountains are those. Is the landscape that somehow attracts me the most.
Yeah. So, I mean, you've obviously got spots that you can revisit that, like you say, it's only about half an hour away from you, maybe more locally. But I mean, for people maybe who only get the chance to visit somewhere once, you mentioned this at the beginning. How do you make the most of visiting a spot? Say you're on holiday, you've only got maybe a day or maybe a week. I mean, what do you do? Do you just do lots of preparation, lots of advanced research, or do you just go and kind of think, right, the light's going to be over there, so I'll just see what it looks like?
Yeah, it's actually, I have to go back to the beginning a little bit, because in my road to photography was also in the way that later on, when I started to get serious in this kind of photography, also my travels somehow attached together with the photography. So when I went to some places, I always did a checkup. Actually, I was picking the destinations where I went because I wanted to take a memorable photograph. So when you go to Iceland, you go to Morocco, you go to France, wherever you want to go to travel, I always search the web. I see where are the places that they are interesting that I could take a good photograph, and actually I make a plan to stay in that place like for 2 days or something like that, because if you have some bad light, bad weather, that you can still have another day. So you actually adjust the whole place to go there. When you go there, to take a certain photograph, you actually become part of the travel. So you still travel, you still have normal travel experience. You go to try the cuisine, to meet the locals, things like that. But for me, the main focus is I have to bring 1 or 2 good photographs back from the from my travels. And when you search, like you said, you do a lot of preparations. You have to see where the sunrise is, when it is, which time of the year is the best to go. Also, if the place that you want to go is open or not. Sometimes you have some road ramps, sometimes you have a cafe that it's not working in the morning, things like that. You have to check up.
Yeah.
And because you have to be 100% sure when you come to the location that it's open and it's available, that you can take a photograph.
Yeah, I mean, you've got lots of shots, which I'm going to talk about a bit later, from when you've traveled, different series that are not purely landscape, which is quite interesting to me. But I'll come to that in a little bit. But you mentioned there you traveled to Iceland, and Iceland obviously somewhere that many photographers love to go to, and it's quite easy, I think, to take a good picture, because everywhere you turn around there's something pretty epic. It's not difficult to get a good shot, but does it make it harder the more people go to a location for you to be creative, or do you just not care and do you just take what you see to take?
Yeah, this is actually quite a difficult question, if I'm honest, as the problem is that a lot of photographers, I would say most of the photographers, wants to be innovative. So to find something new, to find some new views, to find something like that. But if you are doing this in the professional way, like I did, if you don't do it for yourself, then sometimes you just have to stick to the famous places. As for example, a lot of today's marketing goes through the social media.
Yeah.
And it's quite interesting to see the feedback, of the followers of your people that they are following you. In the way, like, for example, if you find something new, and of course you are really happy about it because you find something that it's really nice view, the nice composition that you like, but you put your feelings into it. So you put it on the, let's say, Facebook, and the feedback is not as good as you expected. Then you go to a very popular place like Tuscany, Dolomites, Iceland that you mentioned, or some other places. You put an average photograph, like it's still a sunset, but there are like thousands of them, and then the crowd in the media, in the social media, goes wild. So it's for the self promotion. If I say it like this, it's really important to have photographs from that places, but from the self growing way. It's important to find new places. So it's a combination of both.
Yeah, so practically you have to take those shots because people, they want to see them. But I mean, I asked somebody this last time I was chatting, and it's quite difficult when you put a shot up that you've got a memory attached to. You've got a story behind it. It means quite a lot to you, and then it gets very little feedback. And I mean, is that hard to kind of? I mean, what's the difference between what people react to you? Is it just the fact that it's the shots people like to see, it's the famous shots, and what means a lot to you? Do you find all the time that there's that disparity, that they like these shots better than the ones that mean a lot to you?
Yes and no. I look at from the perspective that, in the way, when you take a shot in that place, you're actually enjoying as well. When I came, there is a famous mountain in Iceland called Kirkjufell, the church mountain with the big waterfall in the front. Most of the landscape photographers, they go there once in a lifetime. But for me, it was also full of emotions when I was there. So I still like this photograph. I actually have it on my desktop for the wallpaper, because this is the place that I've seen so many times from so many different photographers, and I really wish to go there one day to see it. And when you are there, you really see it's fascinating. These photographs that they go through the social media from the famous places, they have a reason that they are famous.
Yeah.
Because when you are there, you can feel that this is like a perfect landscape or perfect composition or whatever that's happening on that location. And when you are there after a long time of pursuing this kind of, I would say, a photographer's dream, you really can have this emotion of fulfilling your kind of a goal or something like that. And also your feelings are quite emotional at the time. So if you get a good feedback on that photograph, that is
even better. Yeah.
The problematic part is that you mentioned is that if you have something that you discover something new, and the other viewers will not find it as attractive as the other photographs, because it's something new that they didn't see it yet. And it can be a fantastic photograph, but it can be forgotten in a couple of days.
That's just the way it is. I mean, talking about creativity, I want to. I came across the images that you did during lockdown. You mentioned lockdown. Obviously, it's had some negative effects on workshops and things like that. But we've seen a lot of creativity coming out of it. And personally, I loved the project that you did. I can't remember, what did you call this project?
That was actually a quarantine time.
It's just,
So
yeah.
this was the
And
time of the lockdown when the COVID situation was the worst. So
mm,
we were not locked in the apartments like in Italy, in our neighbor country, but we were not supposed to go out of the municipalities. So I was sitting at home, without a job because I was working as a guide. So people were not allowed to travel around the world. So I was sitting at home doing practically nothing. I wasn't able to go to take photographs in the mountains because I was not allowed to go
mm,
out of the municipality. So I said, I have to get something from for myself. This was like a personal project. So there was a lot of this kind of ideas going around the internet that I was searching, and I said, why wouldn't I try another project by myself? I do a lot of outdoor activities.
yeah.
Let's try to put this kind of idea into process, and it actually was more like a learning process as well, because I had to figure out the lighting, the idea of where to put the equipment. I didn't sleep for a couple of days to take a certain image, how to put everything together. It was all went through my mind. And I was quite happy with the results because I learned a lot through this, and I actually used the free time that I had at the time. Because I was not able to go climbing, I was not able to go hiking. So how to do it, in
Hmm.
your apartment? That was the
It's
only
fascinating.
trouble. Yeah, the only trouble that I had was actually with the one photograph that I couldn't manage. So it's not part of the series, of course. I also have a stand-up paddleboard, which is quite famous, and it didn't fit into my bathroom, so I couldn't take a photograph. It was too long, so
You didn't have a wide enough lens or a big
yeah,
enough big
not
enough room
not wide
to.
enough lens, but actually the paddleboard was too big to go to the bath tube.
It's
So
fantastic. I mean, you were talking the lighting as we're even looking at the lights in here. You got the light coming out of the fridge. You got the blue light coming out of the freezer. It's fantastically well done. Did you have to put lights in there, or is that all? Is that kind of natural
yeah,
light?
the upper part is actually a headlamp,
Okay,
classical outdoor headlamp that it has this kind of a cold temperature,
cool.
but the
Yeah.
lower the warm light is the light from the fridge actually.
It's fantastic. I mean, I love this kind of thing. I mean, this one as well. I think. Did you say you weren't allowed to jump in there? I think because
No,
you
no,
got
no.
neighbors. So you,
This is actually a composite. So it's I think we will talk about later a little bit about post processing as well. But this is
Mhm.
actually a composite of two photographs. You can see the cat thing in the back in the corner, right? The blue one.
Yes.
Actually, that would in the photo when I did this kind of pose, this I was actually sitting on it. So I took two
Okay.
photographs. One was when I was sitting on it, and one was the photograph of the kitchen with the normal position. Then I just photoshopped that cat part out.
It's
Uh,
fantastic.
so was it looks like I was in the air, but
It's the wonders of Photoshop. But I mean, that's what Photoshop's for, isn't it? I love this. I mean, what
yeah.
about this one? Was this a composite as well, or did you
This
just
no, this is
balance
not a
the?
composite. This is just a static. I was just being static on the couch. So luckily, it was grip was enough. This one actually had a chair under where I'm standing, so I used
Okay.
it later.
I mean, they're
That was
so good. I
actually,
think is there one more there? There's a snowboard.
yeah, yeah.
Let's just balance with there. I think my favorite one of these is this one here. I mean, I don't know if you have a woman that lives with you, but I can imagine the horror of seeing somebody putting clips on the kitchen cupboards and then attempting to dangle for them. Did you do this one for real?
Yeah. It was actually this is I did it, and she was quite well with it because she actually pressed the trigger. So
Oh,
because
right.
I was
Okay.
climbing, obviously I couldn't press the trigger. So
Yes, I did wonder.
I
Yeah.
just set everything on, and she was the one who helped me also with the ideas to develop, to put all the gear up, and then also she took the final photograph.
Excellent. I mean, did you do anything with these images? Did they go out into, on a blog or into a magazine or anything like that?
Yeah, they were circling around. I think also the developer of the backpacks that you can see on this photograph took it for their promotion.
Oh,
So
fantastic. I was going to ask you as well about a series you did, I think at the same time, the Empty Streets series. Is this also something that, I mean, it's just talking about creativity and boredom seems to just breed quite a lot of creativity. The Empty Streets thing as well, was that just local to you?
Yeah, this was actually just using the opportunity, because often when you do photographs in the crowded places, it's very difficult to get a photograph of the place that it's totally empty, that you could use it for, I don't know, like touristic purposes, like info boards or something like that. Because you always have some crowd of the people. Some of them, even if you try with a long exposure, some people will still be standing still
Yeah.
and they'll be all over the place. So quarantine was actually one of the, I would say, opportunities to see the empty streets. So just went out in the blue hour, had a couple of ideas, and then just used that half an hour of good light to snap some photographs that I would never see them again so empty as they were at the
Yeah.
time.
So obviously, lockdown gave you the opportunity to, do different things like that, to be a bit more creative. Is that something that you want to carry on doing, or are you very happy to just get back up the mountains and back, doing what you love outside?
Sure. Of course, quarantine was a bad thing, generally speaking. But I'm by the nature, I try to look through the things positively. You always have to get something out of it. So even if it's bad, at the end, you can still turn it around that it's not so bad at the end. Maybe it's not good, but at least you get something for yourself out of it. So
Absolutely.
if you use some things that you couldn't use before, or just try to find some positive things in some, let's say, quarantine in this time. I try to do this also in the normal life, not when you have these kind of restrictions. Always try
Exactly.
to
Yeah.
find the
Yeah.
positive things to get something of it, or to learn, or to use the opportunity to do something that you couldn't do in the normal circumstances.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of doing maybe unusual for some people, but you do landscapes, you climb as well. Now, you don't often see people doing photography and climbing at the same time for obvious reasons. There's danger to, your equipment, possibly danger to yourself as well. You do climbing. I've got a few pictures here. I'm just going to put some of them up. But how did you decide to start taking photographs while you were climbing? Was it, or did you climb before you took photographs, or how did that all start?
Yeah. Actually, it was opposite. I was taking photographs before I was climbing, but when
Okay.
I started to climb, actually didn't have an intention to take any photographs, because this is kind of quite of a process. Actually, I can talk about this a bit later, but the idea of climbing photography is normally the opposite that I came from. So normally the climbers that they are out in the crags every day and doing a lot of climbing through the time, they start to take their cameras with them. Maybe they start with the phones, maybe they start with the digital cameras, and that they use their climbing knowledge to take photographs. But I came from the other side. I was a photographer who was climbing, so I was not never focused to be a climbing photographer by profession. This was actually, like, you mentioned at the beginning, if I do some film photography, this is kind of a film photography for me. So my personal project, I did landscape photography for my business, and on the other side, I started I started to document the things that I was doing in my free time to um, try to get the knowledge, because the photography, it's a vast thing. It has a lot of knowledge, and then when you specialize to a certain part, it's not necessary that all the knowledge that you have from the, let's say, landscape photography goes to climbing photography. There is much more into climbing photography as opposite. If you're a climbing photographer, you don't know all the things from the landscape photography. So you have to combine, you have to learn, you have to practice, and then the results slowly they start to show.
Yeah, I mean, you do a lot of, I guess, shooting up from the ground, shooting down, but you do a lot hanging off of a rock face as well, which is always interesting to see. I mean, what are some of the photographic challenges involved with, hanging off a rope while holding your camera? Obviously, I'm
Yeah.
guessing maybe, have you ever dropped anything?
Luckily not. So let's keep it this way. But yeah, it's all connected. First with the safety issue. You have to be a climber to do climbing
Yeah,
photography. Some like a normal photojournalist or somebody without any kind of climbing background. It would be
not
very
going to
very
end well.
difficult.
Yeah.
It's possible, but very very difficult. And he will have a lot of other how to say a lot of other troubles, and he will not be able to focus to climbing photography. So if you combine both, if you know how to secure yourself, if you know how to belay, how to be on the rope, how to hang in the wall, it's much much more easier. But still, the truth is that it is very very difficult because you have to be in the safety belt for like half an hour, sometimes even more, and it's quite difficult for the body as well. The forces, you're actually hanging in two straps, and the legs hurt. They start, the blood circulation cuts and things like that. So it can be quite difficult, but still, I enjoy it.
So, I mean, there must be links to landscape as well in terms of, do you wait for the right kind of light? Obviously, you can't use a tripod up there, and you say you're hanging from a rope, so you can't hang around too long. But I mean, what are some of the similarities between landscape and photography? Composition, do you have to think about that, or are you just concentrating on people's expressions, or what makes a good climbing photo for you?
Yeah, sure. Composition is very important in every photograph, but I believe that composition, through the years, through the when you are growing up as a photographer, become kind of like an automatic process. You see it automatic through the viewfinder, so you can still focus more on the details. They always say the devil is in the detail. It can be an expression, it can be a moment, and I was also, I didn't learn all by myself. I was also attending to different kind of workshops by myself or online courses, things like that. And what I remember the most was, especially when it goes to the outdoor photography, when you have like a subject, like a person who is doing it, to try to make a photograph that it will be memorable. So you can take only one photograph and it will tell the whole story. And when you are going out, you try to tell the story of one photograph, like through the whole day. What was the whole adventure, or what are that activity that you were photographing, even though it's like a travel or I don't know, swimming or just like a vacation. Try to get it in one photograph that you took.
So is that a case of you, being there for a period of time before you take the photograph? Or do you just take photos as you go and see what turns out well? Or are you actually thinking, this is the kind of thing I want to get? I've been here for a couple of hours. I've watched the way they climb. I mean, this guy's expression is quite intense. It's quite unique. Did you just capture that, or were you aware of this is what it was going to be like, and I'm going to wait here and try and get this shot?
Uh, it depends. Sometimes you just go for the shot you have in your mind, and then you can actually tell the person that you are with, try to do this, try to do that. It's nothing wrong if you say pose it for me, or if he already climbs it, just go down a little bit and try it again or something like that. Especially most this person on the photograph, it's my friend. It's my very close friend, so he would not be angry that I would tell him go 2-3 meters below and try again. Even though he would be tired, he will still do it 2 or 3 times.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like you said, it just happens. For example, this is the case that it just happened. I was taking photographs of him climbing the route, and in between, it was this moment that he was like really focused on the next step. And this is actually for me, this is one of my favorite photographs, especially what it regards to the climbing, because it shows the story about climbing. Why I like climbing is because you can totally cut off all the world around you. The only thing you can think about is the next move. If you do it wrong, you will fall. So, for example, if you go cycling, if you go running, you can still think about the problems that you have in your work, in your life. If you go climbing, you can think only about the next move. So this is what it means to me.
Well, I mean, talking about cutting yourself off completely, you don't just climb upwards, you climb downwards as well. And this, again, is quite unusual. You do a bit of underground photography, caving, I guess. Is there a proper term for this? Is it spelunk?
Caving, spelunking, underground photography, yeah.
I mean, this is it's landscape, obviously, but there is no light, so you have to, I'm guessing, bring in artificial lights. I mean, how that must be a huge learning curve.
Yeah, this was actually a development through the years. As I was, when I was climbing, I got the knowledge about the climbing techniques, rope techniques, which I try to use into the caves as well. But still, I have to tell the truth. I'm not a professional caver. I don't have any exams to do how to do the proper caving. I use the climbing techniques. So also the photographs that I take in the caves are normally from the caves that they are like really, I would say, simple or not so difficult to go.
Yeah.
For example, this one that you just put in, the ice cave, this one was one of the more difficult caves that I explored. So as I said, my priority is to be climbing photography. Underground is more for like another adventure with my friends. Sometimes, you go to the cave when the weather is bad, because in the cave, the weather most of the time doesn't really matter. And it goes together with the challenge, underground photography or caving photography, if we use it. You mentioned, there is no light, no natural light that you can use in the landscapes, or you can use it in the climbing. Here you have to put the artificial lighting on, and it brings a lot of challenges. First of all, you have to bring a lot of gear with you, flashes, lights, all this kind of stuff takes a lot of heavy gear that you have to put down. Be careful that you don't break it, all the lenses, and everything. Sometimes they can be like a very narrow passages. You have to go with a big backpack and so on. And then you have to put the light, you have to put the flashes in the total darkness. You don't know where to put them. You don't know how strong they are, then you have to try 2 or 3, 4, sometimes even 10 times to make a photograph. And of course, the people that they are with you, they are normally cold, they are freezing, it's dripping, it's ice on the other side, it's cold. And they have to be like really good friends that they can help you with it. So it brings a lot of challenges. For example, in the darkness, it's very difficult to focus. Sometimes you take photograph, you think you made it, you check it on the LCD screen, you can see it's blurred. It's not okay. So you have to do it all again. So
a day out with you, if you're hanging, if you're going out with your climbing friends, they know that they're going to have to do a bit more work than usual, or get a bit colder, I suppose, than usual.
Sometimes it can happen that the friend doesn't pick up the phone yet. Again.
Yeah, caller ID. Yeah, no, thank you. Not today.
He's calling. He wants to go to the cave. I'm not going anymore.
Yeah, no chance. I mean, you talk about using flashes down there. I don't know if it's something that you want to do more of, but I've heard of people doing underground photography and caving photography, and they have, the solid lights so that they can see what they're working with, not just the flashes. Is that something that you'd be interested in doing more of, or are you happy just going there with your flashes, having a bit of fun, and seeing what you get?
I'm sticking with the flashes with the simple reason because I have the small strobes, like speedlight strobes, that they are very light. So light and fast, it's kind of a way to go. If you want to get the big lights into the cave, it takes a lot of logistics, more people to carry it and things like that. And sometimes as well, even if you never have in the cave, you never have enough lights. It will be still dark, so that it's connected with the higher ISO settings, and the grainy photographs and things like that. So I still, when I started to do photography, the cameras were still very basic, and I still have this kind of, I would say, rookie's mistake. I don't want to put the ISO settings very high.
Yes.
Even though today the cameras are capable of very high ISOs, so I try to keep it low as possible, and then use the artificial light to get into it.
And it doesn't seem to take, I mean, like you use the head torches quite a lot for these shots, and maybe lighting up a bit behind them, and that seems to be all it takes to get an atmospheric photograph. You don't actually seem to need to light up the entire cave. Shadows, deep shadows are fine, and they're expected, I suppose, in there, and it's still a very, very effective way of taking shots. But these are fascinating. You don't see much photography underground like that, and it's really quite cool to see. But just let me just take that one away. Just talking of, you mentioned earlier on, you've traveled quite a lot outside of Slovenia. Is there a favorite location that you have, and is there somewhere that you haven't been but you really, really would quite like to get there?
Oh yeah, sure. Of course, everybody has a wish list, right? It's if I would have to expose like one place that I would always go back, I'm sure it's Iceland. It's one of the places that we were talking earlier about, and you cannot take a bad photograph if you are a photographer in Iceland, because the opportunities, there is so many opportunities that you can almost everywhere that you can point a camera, you can make a decent photograph. And then if you are lucky and you get a little bit of magic light, the photographs can be like really astonishing.
Yeah.
From the lists I would like to go, of course, it's a very long list, but if I would have to pick one or two.
You can point on the map behind you. You can say,
yeah, behind me is like an inspiration. Yeah, actually, it's also telling me how big the world is. And even though how much it doesn't matter how much you travel, it's never enough. But if I would have to tell one or two places, Patagonia is probably one of those that I would like to visit, and Nepal as well. So Tibet and Nepal, so all connected with the mountains. With my first kind of love in photography that I wanted to photograph the most.
And I mean, is it mountains that, I mean, you've traveled quite a bit. I mean, I mentioned before you did a series, or you've done a few series. I particularly liked your Cats of Morocco series, I have to say, which is not a typical landscape. But when you do travel, do you look for landscapes first, or do you just do you see things that kind of hit you, like the cats, and think, right, there's a lot of cats here, this would make a fun little series? Or is landscapes kind of the main thing that you look for when you're traveling?
Yeah, first, of course, you go for these iconic places, if there's like a landscape or city or things like that. But then if you want to take a iconic place image in your travel, you always have to focus to special light. Is this sunrise, sunset, dusk, whatever, when this kind of light is, because during the day then you have a lot of time to explore, to travel, to try food and so on. And then when you walk through the streets, you can find an inspiration, and you say, if I'm here, excuse me, I'm still waiting for the perfect light. But then you can do like a side project, and you try to capture, I don't know, the doorknobs, that they are fascinating, or the door itself, or maybe some kind of architectural thing, cats, people, street photography. There is plenty of opportunities that you can try to capture, and to make like a series for me that you can relate with with a certain topic or so on.
So is there somewhere that you are, obviously we can travel again a lot more than we could, is somewhere that you've got coming up that you're planning to go to? Have you got a list ready?
Yeah, the list is ready, but the problem in this time is actually still there are some COVID restrictions in some countries. Also, there is a problem with the airfares. There is less air flights now after COVID, so we'll see. For this year, I don't have any big plans. Mostly here around Slovenia, maybe neighbor countries, Austria, Italy, some Croatia as well.
There's plenty around you. You're not suffering for landscape locations, I don't think. I mean, do you have any memorable moments when it comes to your photography, in terms of, maybe just a great day out, maybe you had got a really, really good picture, or some other adventure? Is there anything that kind of springs to mind as a really memorable day in your photography life?
Yeah, actually, you have both. You have the good ones, you have the bad ones, right? Sometimes you have some funny stories to tell. Sometimes you have some cliches that you could share. But I always try to tell to the people, in the way, the philosophy of photography is that sometimes, I had clients that we were talking about, and they were saying, in the way, why do we make so many photographs? First of all, you go to the places all the iconic places I was mentioning. You told at the beginning, they were already photographed so many times. Why would you even press the shutter? Because everything was photographed at all times of the year, all kind of lights, and so on. But I believe that when you look through the viewfinder and you find a composition that suits you, and you press the trigger, actually that second you're happy, because even though when you will come home, you will delete that photograph because it was in the middle of the day, so the shadows are bad and so on. But at that moment you're happy, and for that moment you actually live in the field of photography. And I find every photograph that I take, it's fulfilling me in certain way. If I look through the viewfinder and if I don't find it, I don't find the idea that I wanted, I don't take a photograph. So in this case, I would say that every photograph that I took, even if I never look at again, was somehow fulfilling for me. And I was satisfied with it. To make me happy, and this is the goal I was going through.
So how about have you ever had any big photographic fails? Maybe you've gone to a location and you've forgotten your memory cards, or I once heard of a photographer who forgot their camera. They traveled a long way and forgot their camera. anything ever happened to you like that?
For me, yeah, sure, of course, it still happens, even though that you gain experience and then now you have a checklist, before you leave that you. But for me, most of the time it happens that I forgot the batteries in the charger. I normally have the memory cards in my backpack all the time, even the reserve ones. But yeah, the batteries are the critical sometimes. You forgot to charge them, or even if you forgot them at home. For me, it was more like an experience on the field that make like a difficult thing. So, for example, I would not call it fail, but it was like a funny story. I was in Myanmar and I was taking photographs of the sunset in like a rocky coast, with the sea. And when I went there, I had to cross a part of the sea which was very low. So I went with the flip-flops. It was quite simple. But when I went back, and I was kind of cut off because of the tide.
Ooh.
So it was I had all the gear with me, big backpack, and the water was rising. So I didn't know what to do. Actually, I said, I'm losing time. I have to go across. So I just put the backpack above my head. I went up to the shoulders into the water to cross it back. If I would go 10 minutes later, for example, I would not be able to cross anymore.
Wow. So, you didn't have to call anybody out to rescue, though.
I actually didn't have any idea how to do that. I had a phone, but I didn't know anybody. I didn't have any phone number, so it would be just like yelling and screaming if somebody hears me.
So that's something to add to your checklist for when you travel, I suppose. Make sure you have emergency numbers for this particular location. Post-processing, Nejc, what is your approach to that?
Yeah.
I'm guessing you're not the heavy-handed type.
Yes and no. Depends how I take it. For example, if you go for the photographs that you would call them art, so for example, landscape, it's part of the artistic photographs. I would say no limits. So it depends on your knowledge. That the boundary is your knowledge. But I would never say something is bad or something is good or something is deleted. It's not right. I always kind of take it as an art. But on the other side, you have documentary photography. So, for example, the climbing photographs or the stories that you make, for example, for the magazines, for National Geographic, things like that. In this case, I would stick only with the darkroom stuff. So, for example, we use Lightroom or similar programs just for the basic corrections. We do not add or delete anything. So in these kind of things, I would say, if you go artistic, you can go heavy on it. If you go documentary, keep it real.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this image here, I particularly liked of yours. This is I'm not sure where this is because it's impossible to tell.
Yeah,
but
it's actually.
Did you have to do much to that?
This could be anywhere. This is actually like I would call it fine art photograph, and it's a solitary tree somewhere in the mountains in Slovenia on actually a snowstorm. There was a snowstorm breeze that we were walking with my girlfriend, and this was like a solitary tree that I just see it through the mist. Took a snap. I actually, at the moment when I took a snap, I didn't believe this will be a good photograph. But when I came home, I actually saw it has some potential.
It's brilliant. I love it. It's serenity, peace. It's beautiful, and I quite like the fact that you can't tell where it is. That could be anywhere, I suppose, in a snowstorm. But it's lovely. I mean, speaking of, I was just going to ask you when the photographic process, when is that finished for you? Do you print your images, or is it a case of once you've uploaded them to social media or to your blog, what's kind of the end point for you, or does it vary by picture? I mean, this picture, for example, would you have printed this, or are you happy just to post that?
Yeah. Sometimes I would print it. Sometimes, sometimes you have people that they want to have your photographs on the wall, so you can do it like this, like a fine art gallery that people can choose, and you can provide the photographs for them. You can print it for them, but most of the time it actually sticks into the digital space. So of course, majority of the photographs that you take, big majority, will stay on the disk and will never be seen again. Those that you pick that you believe that they have some potential, normally they finish in some social media first, and like you mentioned, some blogs if you have time for it. Of course, the blogs take a lot of time. So, but yeah, if you become recognized later on, these photographs can reappear. You can sell them. You can you try to make a story in some first online magazines, maybe some printed magazines as well. But yeah, the competition, as I said, it's getting very, very hard.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time to try to get. Today it won't happen that you will put a photograph on the Facebook and somebody will send you a message. Oh, I like this photograph. I'm an editor of this and this magazine, and I would like to include it into it. You have to be progressive. You have to send emails, send photographs, send this kind of how to say, introduction mails or so on, to sometimes to write a story behind it and to try to promote yourself. And when you are having an established network, then it gets a little bit easier, but still
there, like you say, there are just, everybody's doing it, and everybody with a phone now, I guess, as well. And because most people are watching or looking at them on phones, it's very hard to tell if an image is actually very good quality because you're looking at it so small. So you're right. There's a huge amount of I guess, just competition and stuff out there. I mean, you obviously are. I'm just trying to find a picture that I saw earlier, which is probably all the way back at the beginning. You're a Case Filters ambassador, obviously. You use filters. You've got a lot of waterfall shots, kind of like this one I've seen here, and this one. So obviously you use NDs and things a lot. Do you have a favorite case filter that you kind of always carry with you and you use quite frequently?
Yeah, actually, the polarizer filter, the magnetic polarizer from Case, it's my favorite filter. I always have it in my bag. With the gradient filters and ND filters, it depends. Sometimes it depends what you go to photograph. For example, ND filters, gradient filters are difficult to use. For example, when you go for this kind of outdoor adventure photography, like we were talking about caving or climbing, because they are very big, very clumsy sometimes, and also they don't provide anything extra when you go for this kind of photography. But for the landscape, this is like a must-have. But polarizer is always with me. Polarizer you can use in almost every aspect to enhance the colors, to get the contrast right, things like that. To get out to bring out the reflections and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So,
sorry, I was just saying in the comment, Dean is saying hello. Dean Nixon, he's saying greetings from another Case ambassador. And Andy, I forgot to mention Andy Crow as well, saying hi from Croatia earlier on. We're coming very quickly to the end of the hour, but just a couple of things before we go. I mean, obviously you've been doing this for a number of years now, both workshops and just landscape photography. Do you have any advice or wisdom that you've learnt over the years of you doing it that you would pass on to maybe a younger landscape photographer or adventure photographer, just something that you think would be good to have known when you started out?
The things that I learned through the years is actually that you have to keep it up. So there is, even if you don't take good photographs at the beginning, it takes some time. I heard from one of my idols that once he told that if you look to the first 10,000 photographs that you took, they're all bad. After 10,000 photographs, there might be one or two that they can be good. So just keep it up, try it. Even though that if you go in some place like 2, 3, 5 times, 7 times, 10 times, maybe one day the sun will shine in the right way and you will get the image that you want. So just do what makes you happy.
It's encouraging and depressing at the same time, but definitely words from someone who knows. I mean, you run workshops as well. We mentioned this at the beginning, and that is one of the, I guess, more common ways for landscape photographers to kind of earn a living from landscape photography. Same kind of question, if there's any photographers out there who are thinking they'd really like to turn their hobby into a full-time position, is there any advice you would give potential workshop leaders?
It's important that you get noticed. Today we have flood of photographers from all over the world, and very few photographers they can actually focus to live from it. So if you want to start this kind of job, you have to make yourself a network of people. And as I said earlier, sometimes this network can be very big or very small, but then you have to adjust to provide new tours, new destinations, which means a lot of work of exploring and things like that, of course, if you can afford it. So it's if somebody would like to become, first I would suggest just to take photographs, because you have to be a very knowledgeable photographer if you want to share the knowledge. So you have to use the filters, you have to know the post-processing, and of course the most important is you have to know the destination that you are guiding in every detail, every aspect. When is the best place to go, where, at what time of the year, what to do if you have a bad weather situation, because you have to provide good photographs not good photographs, but good places. For example, you go to the famous place for the sunrise and it's cloudy. What will you do? How to satisfy your clients. You need to have the reserve scenarios. You need to have the logistics, where to sleep, when to go to eat. Sometimes it's difficult, people are hungry, but it's time for the sunset. So what to do, how to combine, it's a lot of work.
Yeah, as well, obviously, as all the research and being a good landscape photographer, I guess you also have to have some people skills. It's not just a case of, I'm really good at this, therefore I'll be a workshop leader. There's people involved, isn't there?
Yeah, a lot of psychology behind as well. How to deal with the problems, how to provide the information in the best possible way, so people can understand. Of course, the language is important. Not everybody speaks perfect English, so you have to try to understand what they are asking, try to answer to those questions, and all this kind of problems that they can appear, through the. It looks like it sounds like a dream job, for some landscape photographer, but actually there is like a lot of hard work behind that normal people don't see it.
Yeah.
So it takes a lot of hours of studying.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I know that very well. We are running out of time. One final question for you, Nejc. If you didn't have to think about bills or money, if money was no object, what would you spend your days shooting?
Mountains, for sure.
Your first love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Fantastic. Listen, Nejc, thank you very, very much for giving up what is about an hour of your time tonight. It's been fantastic just getting to know you and, climbing underground. All the really, really fun stuff you did in quarantine has been fantastic to actually look at. So thank you for that. Just for people, we mentioned your workshops and we mentioned your blog. How can people find more information on what you do? What's your websites and your socials?
Yeah, they can find it by my social media is related with my name. You just put in Nejc Trpin and you will find me on Instagram and Facebook. And about the workshops with my partners, we have a workshop company called Trips for Photos. So it's with the number 4 in between, trips, number4photos.com. This year we are, because of the corona and all these kind of related things, we are more focused to the weekend workshops. But we hope that in the next years we will go back to the previous way that we had like a weekly or 10 days or even longer workshops in different countries around the world.
Okay, and obviously Slovenia as well. I'm guessing you've been talking so much about Slovenia and how wonderful it is. It's very inspiring. So if anybody wants to come and see Slovenia for a weekend, or for, I guess, maybe longer than that, trips for the number 4 photos.com is a place to go, or search for Nejc online. That's fantastic. Listen, thank you so much. That is about all we've got time for tonight. So I'm just going to wrap it up there. And a big thank you to everybody that joined in on the chat, and to you as well for giving up your time, Nejc. I'll be back next month, hopefully, with another interview with another fantastic ambassador from CASE. As I mentioned at the beginning, if you want to watch this again, or if you'd like to share it with anybody, it should be available. The replay should be available just a few minutes after we wrap up. So anyway, from me, thank you very much. Have a good rest of the night. Nejc, have a good rest of your night as well. I don't know what time it is in Slovenia. It must be, you're an hour ahead, I think, of where we are. So it's getting towards the end of the night. But anyway, yeah, have a good rest of your night. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.